Imagine this. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy arrive on Earth expecting to find frightened primitives. And instead, they see a man calmly resting his hand on the head of a predator that should, by all rights, rip him apart. What happens when the elder races discover humanity's greatest secret? That we keep apex predators not in cages, not as trophies but as companions. Stick around to see what shocked the galaxy's oldest empires, and before we dive in, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment with what predator you dare keep as a pet, and subscribe for more stories where humanity shows the universe exactly what we're made of. The shuttle descended through a break in the clouds, its sleek hull gleaming with faint blue light as it carved a path toward the landing platform outside Geneva. Captain Elias Ward stood with his hands clasped behind his back, posture immaculate, expression unreadable. A soldier's bearing, drilled into him through years of service, now pressed into diplomatic duty. He had led men in war zones, commanded peacekeeping missions and stared down insurgents. But this was different. Today he would greet beings who had outlived empires before humanity even lit its first fire. He felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. The elder races had come. Not merely to observe but to judge. Humanity's petition to join the Galactic Concord had finally been acknowledged after decades of silence, and this delegation's verdict would shape the future of Earth for centuries. The shuttle's hatch irised open with a hiss, releasing a gust of cool sterilized air. 4 figures emerged, tall and slender, with elongated limbs and silvery robes that caught the sunlight like liquid metal. Their skin shimmered faintly, their eyes large and obsidian, reflecting everything and nothing at once. Behind them followed their aides, smaller figures with instruments humming faintly. The leader, Lord Vareth, raised a hand in a gesture that was equal parts greeting and command. "Captain Elias Ward," Vareth intoned, his voice carrying a resonant harmony as though 2 voices spoke in unison. "We arrive as witnesses of your species' worth. Your world has been evaluated from afar. Now we must see with our own eyes." Elias inclined his head, careful to keep his tone even. "On behalf of Earth and her people, I welcome you. You will find we have nothing to hide." A rustle of fur at his side drew the delegation's attention. A large wolfish animal sat beside Elias, its coat a mottled mix of gray and silver, its yellow eyes sharp yet calm. It rested easily at his heel, one paw crossed over the other as though perfectly at home amid the assembly of alien dignitaries. The air shifted. The aides stiffened. Vareth's composure faltered for the briefest heartbeat. "What is this?" he demanded. Elias let his hand drop, fingers brushing the creature's head in a casual stroke. The wolf, Orion, tilted its head slightly but remained still. "This is Orion," Elias said. "My companion." Whispers rippled through the delegation, their instruments chirping urgently as if in alarm. One aide's eyes widened in what could only be fear. "A predator," another elder murmured. "Unbound. Untamed. At your side." Elias didn't smile, but there was a glint in his eyes. "He's neither unbound nor untamed. He is loyal. He is family." Lord Vareth stepped closer, his robe brushing against the polished stone of the platform. "In all the Concord's worlds, predators are scourges. They are destroyed or locked away for their instincts cannot be trusted. And you," his voice sharpened, "you invite one to sit at the table of diplomacy?" "On Earth," Elias said evenly, "we learned long ago that survival required respect. We hunt, yes, but we also protect. We don't just fear predators, we live alongside them." The silence that followed was taut, stretched like a bowstring. The elders exchanged glances, their features unreadable yet clearly unsettled. From the periphery, Dr. Marcus Hale watched with interest. He adjusted his spectacles, more habit than need, and made a mental note of every twitch, every flicker of unease from the visitors. Marcus was not a soldier. He was a scientist, a xenobiologist whose career had been built on studying the evolutionary quirks of Earth's life. Where Elias embodied strength and composure, Marcus was curiosity and reason. Together they were humanity's chosen face, the warrior and the scholar. Vareth finally broke the silence. "This anomaly will be recorded. You claim coexistence, but we see recklessness. We must witness more before judgment." "You'll have it," Elias said, motioning toward the convoy waiting to take them into the city. "A tour has been prepared. You will see how we live. You will see that predators are not our enemies." The delegation followed, though their gazes never strayed far from Orion, who padded silently beside Elias. The creature's presence was a constant shadow, a reminder that something about humanity was deeply, dangerously different. As they entered Geneva's central hall, Marcus fell into step beside Elias. "You realize," Marcus murmured under his breath, "that you've just terrified half the delegation." Elias's lips twitched in something almost like amusement. "Good. Maybe they'll start to understand." Marcus gave a low chuckle. "Or maybe they'll start plotting how to contain us." The city unfolded before the elders, streets alive with people, laughter, commerce, the hum of life. Children played in parks where dogs chased frisbees, tails wagging. Police patrols passed with canine partners at their side. Images of wild reserves projected on public screens showed lions basking, eagles soaring, bears lumbering. Everywhere the unspoken truth was evident. Predators were not gone, not feared into extinction, but integrated into daily existence. Vareth stopped more than once, his gaze narrowing. "Do your people not fear attack? What if one of these beasts turns?" Marcus stepped forward this time. "We don't erase instincts, we guide them. These animals aren't weapons. They're partners. Humanity survived not by exterminating predators, but by learning to walk beside them." The elders' expressions remained guarded, but their instruments continued to buzz with readings they couldn't seem to reconcile. As the tour wound down, the delegation was escorted toward a waiting chamber where a private dinner would be held. Elias glanced back at Orion, who padded along without hesitation, as though aware of the eyes locked on him. The night closed in around Geneva, the stars just beginning to prick the velvet sky. The elders gathered in low murmurs, their voices too faint for humans to catch. But Marcus, watching carefully, caught the tone, disbelief laced with unease. They had expected savages begging for entry into the Concord. Instead, they found a people who treated predators, the very embodiment of danger in their eyes, as companions. It was a revelation they had not prepared for. When the elders retired to their quarters, Vareth lingered at the balcony, staring down at the city alive with human noise. Elias joined him, Orion sitting faithfully at his side. "You claim harmony with chaos," Vareth said at last. "If that is true, then the Concord will not know what to make of you." Elias met his gaze without flinching. "Then they'll have to decide whether they fear us, or respect us." Vareth's eyes glimmered in the starlight, unreadable, before he turned away. Elias stood in the quiet that followed, the city humming beneath them, the wolf's steady presence at his heel. For the first time he felt the enormity of what was unfolding. Humanity's fate was no longer about politics or technology. It was about something older, something primal. And the elders had only just begun to see it. The convoy rolled out at dawn, sunlight spilling over the Alps and scattering across the polished domes of Geneva as if the earth itself had dressed in its finest for alien guests. Inside the lead vehicle, Elias Ward sat opposite Lord Vareth and two other elders whose names had been presented but whose eyes betrayed only cool appraisal. Orion lay stretched at Elias's boots, yellow gaze sweeping the cabin with quiet vigilance. The hum of the vehicle filled the silence until Marcus Hale, seated beside Elias, leaned forward to address the visitors. "We thought it best to begin with controlled environments," Marcus explained. "Facilities where humanity's relationship with predators is formalized. Then you'll see the informal bonds, the kind that truly unsettle you." The elders gave no reply, though their aides recorded every word, every flicker of expression from the humans. Elias noticed one aide flinch whenever Orion shifted his weight, as though expecting an imminent lunge. He kept his composure, but inwardly he felt the tension sharpening. This was not mere curiosity from the elder races. It was suspicion poised on the edge of fear. The first stop was a sprawling military training ground on the city's outskirts. Rows of handlers worked with sleek, muscled dogs, guiding them through obstacle courses, scent drills and tactical exercises. The animals barked sharp commands of dominance and loyalty, their focus absolute. Elias gestured toward them. "These partners serve in search and rescue, law enforcement and combat support. They save lives in earthquakes, track fugitives, detect explosives. Without them, thousands more would be lost." One elder tilted his head. "They are controlled through pain?" "No," Elias answered, steel in his tone. "Through trust, repetition and care. They obey because they want to. Because the bond is stronger than fear." The elder frowned, as though unable to imagine such a foundation. The delegation moved on, their instruments capturing data in frenetic bursts. The second stop was quieter, a wildlife rehabilitation center nestled among green foothills. Here the air smelled of pine and damp soil, and the sounds were not barks or drills but the rustle of wings and the deep rumble of slumbering bears. The elders walked the fenced paths, peering into enclosures where creatures once broken by injury or poaching now healed under human hands. Marcus guided them to a shaded clearing where a massive bird of prey perched on a handler's arm, its talons curved like knives. This eagle, Marcus said, was found starving. She chose to stay after her recovery. We do not force her, she could leave yet she remains. That choice matters. Veritha's obsidian eyes lingered on the bird, then flicked toward Marcus. You speak as if predators grant consent. They do not. They devour. Perhaps everywhere else, Marcus replied quietly, but not here. As the tour wound deeper into the forested grounds, the moment that would define the day unfolded. A low growl vibrated through the underbrush, abrupt and primal. Guards tensed, the elders' aides shrieked warnings, and Orion stiffened, lips peeling back in readiness. From the thicket, a compact figure burst forth, a wolverine, its dark fur bristling, its posture both aggressive and pained. One hind leg dragged slightly, marked by a fresh wound. The elders recoiled, their robes whispering as they stumbled back. To them this was disaster, an apex predator, untethered, injured, and dangerous. Verith barked an order in his native tongue, and two aides raised pulsars that hummed with deadly light. Wait, Marcus said, stepping forward before Elias could stop him. His heart hammered in his chest, but his voice was steady. Give it space. The wolverine's eyes locked on him, feral and sharp. It hissed, teeth bared, every muscle coiled for violence. Yet Marcus crouched low, hands visible, voice low and calm. You're hurt, aren't you? Hungry, scared, but you don't want this fight. He spoke not in command, not in threat, but in understanding. From his pocket he drew a ration bar, tore it open, and tossed it gently onto the ground between them. The scent carried on the breeze. The wolverine hesitated, nostrils flaring. Every elder watched, instruments trembling in their hands, convinced the beast would lunge. But instead, it crept forward, eyes never leaving Marcus, and seized the food. It ate, hackles still raised, but its growl softened to a low rumble. Marcus eased closer, careful not to break eye contact. He reached into his pack and drew a small field medkit. The elders gasped audibly as he extended his hand. The wolverine snapped its jaws an inch from his fingers, a warning, but then allowed him to dab antiseptic along the wound. The animal snarled once, then quieted, shuddering under his touch. When Marcus pulled away, it limped back toward the brush, leaving the humans and aliens frozen in astonishment. The silence cracked with the hurried chatter of the aides. Data scrolled furiously on their displays, readings they had no framework to interpret. Verith himself looked shaken, though he masked it with a sneer. Reckless, he spat. You endanger us all with this farce. Or perhaps, Marcus said, rising to his feet, you just saw what your people said was impossible. A predator chose restraint. Chose trust. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Elias saw the doubt spreading among the other elders, the faint crease of thought across their features. For all their centuries of wisdom, this was something outside their experience. They left the rehabilitation center in silence. The convoy wound back toward the city as dusk approached, headlights carving through the shadows. Inside, the atmosphere was taut, the elders whispering in their liquid tongue, their voices tight with disbelief. Marcus sat beside Elias, his hands still faintly smelling of antiseptic, his mind replaying the moment with the wolverine. You could have been mauled, Elias muttered. Marcus smirked faintly. Could have. But I wasn't. And they saw it. Elias didn't argue. He knew the significance of what had transpired. One act of trust had rattled the unshakable composure of beings older than empires. When the convoy reached the delegation's quarters, Verith paused at the threshold. His obsidian eyes lingered on Elias and Marcus, then on Orion, who met his gaze without flinching. Understand this, Verith said. Predators have toppled civilizations. They are chaos given flesh. If your kind embraces them, then you may be more dangerous than any world we have ever known. He swept inside, robes trailing, leaving his words to hang like smoke in the cold evening air. Elias exhaled slowly, the weight of the day pressing on him. Marcus stood beside him, silent, his mind already racing with implications. Orion growled low in his throat, as if sensing the storm gathering beyond human sight. The elders had come to measure humanity's worth. Instead, they had glimpsed something they did not understand, something that threatened the very foundation of their belief. And this was only the beginning. The Galactic Concord's assembly chamber was vast, a cathedral of light suspended in orbit above a nameless star. Marble-like pillars rose toward a vaulted ceiling where holograms shifted with each speaker's voice. Hundreds of delegates gathered in their floating thrones, their forms ranging from crystalline beings to scaled titans, all focused on the small dais at the center where Elias Ward and Marcus Hale stood. Lord Varith presided over the session, his silvery robes glimmering like liquid mercury. His voice echoed across the chamber, carrying not only in words but in that unsettling dual resonance that made even simple phrases feel like judgment. Humanity stands before us, Varith declared, a species that claims fellowship with predators. They invite chaos into their homes and call it family. This is recklessness masquerading as harmony. We demand proof that these creatures do not simply bide their time until instinct overcomes illusion. Murmurs spread among the assembly. Some nodded, their features tight with agreement. Others leaned forward, intrigued. Humanity's petition had stirred a division sharper than any in living memory. Elias kept his chin high, his voice calm when he answered. You misunderstand us. We do not suppress predators with drugs or chains. We build trust, loyalty, respect. It is a bond older than our civilizations, forged in survival. You cannot dismiss it because it does not fit your laws. The chamber rumbled with dissonant voices, arguments crackling like lightning. Marcus stood slightly behind Elias, his eyes scanning the assembly. He saw fascination in some faces but also fear. The kind of fear that sought preemptive control. Varith raised a hand and silence fell. Words are wind. Proof is flesh. Humanity will submit to a trial. A human and one of their so-called companions will be released into the wilds of Rigel 4. There, under the watch of impartial observers, we shall see whether this bond is truth or delusion. A ripple of approval surged through the chamber. Marcus's gut twisted. He had studied Rigel 4, a death world covered in dense forests and ridges where native predators had torn apart countless survey teams. To the elders, it was a crucible of instinct, a place where no lies could endure. I'll do it, Marcus said before Elias could respond. His voice rang out with surprising steadiness. If they want to see the truth, then I'll show them. Elias turned sharply. Marcus, this isn't your fight alone. The scientist adjusted his glasses, jaw set. It's not just science anymore. It's our species on trial. And I have someone who'll stand with me. Images flashed through his mind. The Wolverine in the rehabilitation center, scarred but alive, meeting his gaze with something beyond instinct. He knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that the animal would come if called. Elias's hand tightened into a fist. Then I go with you. You won't stand alone. Varitha's lips curved in what might have been satisfaction, or perhaps cruelty. So be it. The trial begins at dawn. The next morning, a shuttle bore Elias, Marcus, and their chosen companions to the surface of Rigel 4. The descent rattled with turbulence as storms clawed at the hull, lightning flashing across an alien sky. When the hatch opened, the stench of damp earth and ozone filled their lungs. Orion leapt down beside Elias, hackles raised but alert, eyes scanning the tree line. The wolf hybrid's presence was a steady anchor. From the brush, the Wolverine appeared as if summoned by fate, limping slightly but bristling with feral determination. Marcus knelt and extended a hand. The creature padded forward, sniffed, and pressed its head against his palm. A silent pact reaffirmed. High above, drones hovered, their lenses glowing faintly. Delegates watched through live feeds, their voices hushed as the trial commenced. The forest swallowed them whole. Shadows layered upon shadows, every rustle of leaves carrying menace. Elias moved with the precision of a soldier, rifle slung but ready. Marcus carried little more than his medkit, his trust placed in instinct and intellect. The animals padded close, ears flicking, every muscle taut. Hours passed under the oppressive canopy. Strange cries echoed, predators circling unseen. Marcus felt the weight of countless eyes tracking them. Then the first attack came. A massive beast lunged from the undergrowth, scaled, six-legged, jaws lined with serrated teeth. Orion met it midair, fangs flashing. The impact shook the ground. Elias fired, the shot precise, burning a hole through one scaled shoulder. The creature howled, retreating into the shadows. The Wolverine snarled and bounded after it, savage despite its limp. Marcus scrambled to keep up, his heart racing. He saw the predator slash at their assailant's flank, fearless and relentless, until the larger beast fled bleeding. Above, the watching elders gasped. To them this was no natural behavior. Apex predators did not protect prey, they consumed it. Yet here was one spilling blood to shield a human. The attacks did not stop. As night fell, more came, packs of scaled hounds, slithering serpents with venomous spines. Again and again Elias fought with soldier's skill, Marcus patched wounds with steady hands, and their companions defended with savage loyalty. The forest floor became a battlefield of claw and steel, each clash sending ripples through the watching concord. What none of the humans knew was that Varith had orchestrated this. The trial was never meant to be fair. Mercenaries had released captured predators from other worlds, creatures even deadlier than Rigel Ivy's native fauna, their presence a guaranteed death sentence. Varith wanted humanity exposed as reckless frauds. But the outcome defied him. The more peril they faced, the more fiercely their companions fought, not as beasts but as partners. The wolf and wolverine moved with uncanny coordination, flanking enemies, protecting the humans, retreating only to regroup. Their eyes gleamed not with mindless hunger, but with shared purpose. Exhausted, bloodied, the group reached a ridge overlooking a valley bathed in alien moonlight. Smoke from burning foliage rose where plasma fire had scarred the land. Elias slumped against a boulder, shoulder torn by a glancing strike. Marcus knelt beside him, hands shaking as he sealed the wound. The wolverine planted itself at Marcus's side, chest heaving, fur slick with blood not all its own. Orion paced the ridge, growling low at the shadows gathering beyond the treeline. "They won't stop," Marcus said quietly, eyes darting toward the forest. "They've stacked the game against us." Elias gritted his teeth against pain. "Then we stack it back. We hold. We show them why humanity survives." The word steadied Marcus. He looked into the wolverine's eyes, eyes that burned with the same resolve he felt in his own chest. For the first time he believed utterly that they could endure. Below, more predators stirred. The night was far from over. Yet above them, countless alien eyes watched, shaken by the impossible sight, predators not preying on men but guarding them. And as the first growl of the next assault rolled across the valley, the question spread like wildfire through the assembly. If predators themselves chose humanity, what did that make humans? The valley trembled with sound. Low growls rolled through the forest, punctuated by the snap of branches as heavy forms pushed closer. Elias Ward shifted his weight against the boulder, his shoulder freshly bandaged but still throbbing with pain. The night pressed down like a weight, moonlight slashing silver across the ridge where he and Marcus Hale held their ground. Orion prowled at the edge of the rocks, lips curled, while the wolverine sat braced beside Marcus, its breathing rough but its eyes unyielding. "They're circling," Elias muttered, scanning the tree line. His hand hovered near his rifle, though he knew ammunition was running low. Marcus adjusted his glasses with a hand streaked in blood and dirt. "They've been circling for hours. This isn't just instinct. Someone wants us tested to the breaking point." "They'll get their test," Elias replied, voice clipped. His gaze flicked to the wolf hybrid who stood rigid, every muscle straining toward the dark. "And they'll see what happens when predators choose a side." The first wave came without warning. A half-dozen scaled beasts broke from the trees, their eyes glowing like embers, claws tearing through soil. Orion lunged to meet them, a blur of fur and fury. He struck the lead creature with enough force to topple it, teeth tearing into its throat before rolling free to snap at another. The wolverine moved with raw defiance, launching at a beast twice its size. Its claws ripped across the predator's face, sending it howling back into the brush. Marcus shouted as one creature broke through toward him, but the wolverine planted itself between them, its body a wall of snarling defiance. Elias fired two sharp bursts, dropping one attacker and staggering another. The recoil bit into his wounded shoulder, but he ignored it. He had fought insurgents in deserts, rebels in jungles, and knew the rhythm of survival. Move, aim, breathe, shoot. Only now he fought not alongside soldiers but with animals that bled for him. The clash dissolved into chaos. Dust, blood, and fire mingled in the night as predator met predator. Orion ripped down a scaled brute, narrowly dodging its claws. The wolverine tore into another's hindquarters, relentless even as it took a glancing blow that sent it staggering. Marcus pulled it back, shouting encouragement, before hurling a flare into the undergrowth to scatter the next wave. Above them, drones recorded every moment. Delegates across the galaxy sat in stunned silence as the feed streamed into the Concord chamber. They watched predators fighting not out of hunger or compulsion, but in a pattern that looked disturbingly like loyalty. Lord Varith rose from his throne, his voice cold. "Tricks. The humans drug them, enslave them, corrupt their instincts. Nothing else explains this betrayal of nature." But the other elders leaned forward, their expressions shifting. Some whispered that they saw not tricks but choice. No binding, no chains, no devices. Just creatures standing their ground for men who refused to abandon them. Back on the ridge, the battle reached a crescendo. A colossal predator emerged from the treeline, larger than any they had yet faced, scales jagged like armor, eyes burning with alien hunger. It roared, shaking the air, and the smaller beasts parted for it. Elias steadied his rifle, knowing the shot would barely slow it. "Marcus," he said quietly, "if it breaks through, you run." Marcus looked at him, pale but resolute. "Not a chance. We stand together." The wolf hybrid let out a deep, resonant growl, placing itself directly before Elias. The wolverine staggered to its feet despite its wounds, planting beside Marcus. Both animals braced, facing the behemoth without hesitation. The giant predator charged, earth shaking under its weight. Elias fired until his rifle clicked empty. The beast roared, swiping aside the last of the burning brush. In that instant Orion leapt, not at its throat but at its eyes. The wolf's body slammed against the creature's skull, claws digging, teeth tearing into soft tissue. The beast shrieked, blinded. The wolverine followed, climbing the predator's chest with raw savagery, claws raking deep into exposed flesh. Marcus shouted encouragement, watching the impossible unfold. Two predators of Earth fighting as if guided by strategy, not instinct. Elias staggered to his feet, drew his sidearm, and fired 3 precise rounds into the wound the wolverine had opened. The great beast convulsed, collapsed, and finally lay still. For a long moment, silence held. Orion limped back to Elias, blood matting his fur, eyes still sharp despite exhaustion. The wolverine dragged itself to Marcus, collapsed against his legs and let out a rasping breath, but its eyes glowed with grim satisfaction. High above, the drones broadcasted this scene across the Concord. Delegates leaned forward, stunned by the sight of predators defending humans against overwhelming odds. Some murmured disbelief, others awe. "Look at them," whispered one crystalline being. "They bleed together." Varith slammed a hand against his armrest. "No. This is contamination. Predators do not choose. They cannot choose." But even his voice could not drown the truth. The images spoke louder than any argument. On the ridge, Marcus crouched beside the wolverine, stroking its head gently. His voice trembled with emotion. "You stayed. You didn't have to, but you did. Why?" He knew there would be no spoken answer, but in the steady, unblinking gaze of the animal, he felt something more profound than words. Elias, leaning heavily against Orion, lifted his eyes to the sky where drones still hovered. He spoke not to Marcus, not to himself, but to the galaxy beyond. "This is humanity. We don't just survive predators. We stand beside them. And they choose to stand beside us." The feed cut to silence in the Concord chamber. Delegates stared at one another, shaken to the core. For the first time, doubt gnawed at the certainty that predators could never be allies. If these humans commanded such bonds, what else might they command? On the ridge, night gave way to the first pale light of dawn. The forest was quiet now, the bodies of fallen predators scattered across the valley. Marcus held the wolverine close, whispering reassurances. Orion pressed his head into Elias's hand, eyes weary but steady. They had survived the test. But survival was only part of it. What they had proven, the bond between human and predator, was something the galaxy had never seen before. Elias looked eastward, toward the rising sun bleeding gold across the horizon. "This isn't over," he murmured. Marcus followed his gaze, his expression grave. "No. It's only just begun." The Concord chamber was silent, yet tension thrummed like a taut string ready to snap. Countless delegates from every elder race sat within the great hall, their forms glittering, glistening, or shadowed in ways that defied human description. Suspended above them, massive hollow displays replayed the feed from the ridge. Elias Ward and Marcus Hale standing bloodied but unbroken, flanked by Orion and the battered wolverine. Every movement was replayed, slowed, dissected, the predators defending their human companions not out of coercion but out of choice. Elias stood at the center of the chamber floor, his uniform torn, his shoulder bound in rough bandages. He was weary, but his gaze burned steady as it swept across the hall. Marcus stood beside him, one hand resting lightly on the wolverine's harness. The creature's fur was scorched in patches, but its eyes were alive with feral intensity. Orion, his hybrid wolf form tall and imposing, paced slowly in front of the humans, daring anyone to question his place. The chamber master's voice rang out, mechanical and impartial. The matter before the Concord, to decide if humanity's practices constitute violation of galactic law, or if precedent must be changed to accommodate evidence presented. Lord Varith rose at once, his jeweled robes catching the light like a cascade of knives. This is deception, he thundered. You witness predators manipulated into false loyalty. They are tools, corrupted and bound. If we allow this, humans become shepherds of monsters. You would place an apex predator in the same bed as a child and call it companionship. His voice cut sharp across the hall, dripping with disgust. Marcus stepped forward, his voice quieter but steadier, striking a contrast that held attention. You claim corruption, yet you saw no chains, no drugs, no mind snares. You saw choice. That wolf could have torn free at any moment. That wolverine could have abandoned me to the beast. Instead they fought with us. Not for reward. Not for command. For bond. Because humans don't just survive predators, we understand them. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates whispered of danger, others of potential. One insectoid elder clicked his mandibles and thought. If predators can bond, can ally, what stops them from rallying under human banners? An army not of soldiers, but of nightmares given loyalty? That, Elias said stepping into the space, is exactly why you fear us. And why you should respect us. His voice carried, steady as stone, resonant with something more than words. Humans don't tame predators. We earn them. Where you saw instinct, we saw choice. Where you saw monsters, we saw partners. That is our strength. Not weapons, not ships, trust. And if trust from the deadliest beings in the wild frightens you, then you've finally begun to understand us. For a moment, the silence was absolute. Then the displays replayed the final moment on the ridge. Orion launching onto the giant predator's skull, the wolverine raking its chest, Elias's precise shots ending the beast's rampage. The hall erupted into divided voices, shouts of awe, cries of alarm, the scraping thunder of ancient minds colliding in decision. Varitha's voice rose above them all, shrill with fury. This cannot stand. Humanity is a threat to the balance. If we permit them into the Concord, we invite ruin. Today they keep predators as pets. Tomorrow they will unleash armies upon us all. I move for exile, for quarantine. Enough. The word came from one of the oldest elders, a crystalline matriarch whose voice resonated like chimes across the chamber. Her multifaceted eyes studied Elias and Marcus with unnerving clarity. I have seen predators my kind could not subdue. I have seen them rend ships apart, tear cities to dust. Yet here I see something else. I see them bleed for men not of their kind. And I see men bleed for them. Perhaps it is not corruption, but evolution. Perhaps it is a bond even we, in all our millennia, have failed to grasp. Her words shifted the tide. More delegates leaned forward, reconsidering. Whispers turned to debates, debates into votes. The chamber master's lights flared, signaling the tally. Elias stood tall, his heart pounding though his face betrayed nothing. Marcus kept his hand on the wolverine, whose growl reverberated like a warning through the marble floor. Orion sat, regal and composed, amber eyes fixed on the elders as though he knew what was at stake. The chamber master's voice returned, clear and final. By vote of majority, the Concord recognizes humanity's practices as lawful. Humanity shall be admitted as members of the Concord. The precedent is set. Bonds between human and predator are acknowledged as legitimate. The chamber exploded into noise, cheers, outrage, disbelieving cries. Varith shouted curses, his form twisting with rage, but his voice was drowned beneath the roar. Elias allowed himself a single exhale, a weight lifting from his chest. Marcus let out a laugh, ragged but bright, hugging the wolverine so tight it yipped in protest. For the first time in living memory, the elders had been forced to bend. Humanity had not conquered them with fleets or weapons, but with something far older, the trust of beasts no one else could touch. When the noise subsided, Elias turned to Marcus. We're in. But we've painted a target on our backs. They won't forget this. Marcus nodded, his smile fading into something more sober. Let them come. We're not alone anymore. And they know it. He glanced at Orion, who stood like a sentinel, scarred but proud. At the wolverine, who licked his hand with fierce affection. Whatever comes next, we won't face it without them. In the upper tiers of the chamber, hidden from the hollow feeds, certain elders whispered together, their voices laced with fear and calculation. If they can bond predators, what else can they bond? One asked. Another hissed in reply, pray we never find out. Back on Earth, broadcasts of the decision spread like wildfire. Children watched wide-eyed as images of Orion standing beside Elias filled the screens. Soldiers in distant outposts raised their glasses in pride. Farmers, workers, and dreamers alike felt the pulse of something greater. A truth that had always been theirs, but now the galaxy was forced to acknowledge. Humans had never been the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced. But they had always been the ones who walked with wolves, who fed the wounded, who kept the unkeepable and turned it into family. As the chamber emptied and night fell over the alien capital, Elias stood at the balcony with Marcus, the two predators resting at their sides. The city lights glittered below like stars, vast and alien, yet no longer unwelcoming. Elias's voice was low, thoughtful. "We didn't just win a place. We changed the rules." Marcus leaned on the railing, eyes on the horizon. "And rules don't stay changed without a fight." Orion lifted his head and howled, the sound rolling over the alien city like a declaration. The wolverine answered with a growl, guttural and proud. Together, their voices carried into the night, a reminder of the bond that had brought humanity to the table of elders. In that moment, Elias knew the future would not be easy. Enemies would rise, battles would come, and fear would always follow humanity's shadow. But he also knew something else, something the galaxy had only just begun to understand. The deadliest predators of the universe no longer hunted alone. They had chosen their place beside men. And that choice would change everything.